Welcome to the Orgasmic Lifestyle Podcast by Venus O'Hara. I'm here to welcome you into the world of orgasmic living by hosting experts to discuss orgasmic topics such as nutrition, spirituality, personal development, sexuality, and much more. Here, we will offer lifestyle lessons that can help you lead a fulfilling, joyous, and orgasmic lifestyle. I'm your guide, Venus O'Hara. Welcome to episode 117 of the Orgasmic Lifestyle Podcast with Venus O'Hara. In this new moon episode, we discuss sleep. We speak with Morgan Adams, who is a sleep coach. I also review the book, Speaking from the Heart, 18 Languages for Modern Love by Anne Hodder Shipp, and she is a future podcast guest. The episode ends with a guided meditation with affirmations for a relaxing night's sleep. But first, let me share with you my own struggles and solutions for sleeping better. It's quite ironic that I'm speaking about sleep today on a day that I am absolutely shattered. I didn't have the best night's sleep last night, but the motive is not a bad one. I got this big burst of creativity quite late last night, and I wrote 2 Substack posts. I started my first Substack last week, to announce the publication of my book, Orgasmic Manifestation. I'd written the post a couple of weeks before, and I was waiting for the big day of the Amazon delivery of my paperback to actually post it. So I was super excited about that big moment. And I was really surprised by the positive reaction to it. I got a lot more traffic than I expected. Not a bad start for the beginning. This has really motivated me to create more posts. And also I've been told that Substack is kind of sexual wellness friendly. So that means I don't have to worry too much about the censorship that one has to encounter on different platforms. But I'm not really too focused on the sexuality aspect. I think the fact of, being able to write something is kind of giving me this new, I don't know how to say it, unleashed version of myself. I'm kind of going to be treating it a little bit like a fun diary with some reflections and calls to action as well, so I can kind of push my services on there. So I've written a couple of really juicy posts, and I'm really enjoying this process actually. So I can't wait for them to come out. So yeah, it's nice to be motivated at midnight with creative intentions. But yeah, my mind was kind of on fire last night, so it took me a while to sleep. I had some super intense dreams. Oh my God. So sleep has been something that has kind of been a challenge for me throughout my life, actually since childhood, and especially during my teenage years. I remember having insomnia from time to time. I don't know why, but it was always when I was in high school, the first day of going back to school in September, the night before, I would never sleep. So that first day was just exhausting. And then sometimes I would go back to bed in the afternoon and have a little siesta. But those nights of insomnia were few and far between. And then over time and becoming an adult and independent and etc., and having real world worries to take care of myself, insomnia has been, I think sleep is one of the first areas where that is affected when things are not quite balanced in my life. And I also suffer with nocturia, which I've shared on here a few times. And nocturia was something that happened to me occasionally when I was a student at university, especially before the night before exams. I would go to the loo maybe, 15 times and have this obsession of, have I emptied my bladder, and lie down and feel like I hadn't completely emptied and getting up again and again. It was kind of like an OCD thing, really. And nocturia has become a more regular occurrence, unfortunately, to the point where it's not just on nights of extra stress. It's kind of most nights, to be honest. I mean, some nights are better than others. I mean, I can still do 10 times a night, which is really crazy. But now I would say if I'm more calm, it could be maybe 3 times in a night or something like that. But still, this has affected me profoundly in my personal life. When, for example, if I go on retreats and things like that, I always have to have my own room and my own bathroom. And I have many friends who have summer houses on the Costa Brava, and I've always not been able to go to different weekend excursions because of the fact there wasn't an ensuite room for me. So that has really negatively impacted my personal life. And also with relationships, I find it very difficult to actually share my bed as well, because I just can't really sleep that well next to someone. But that's also, there are other motives why I choose not to do that mostly when I'm in my intimate life. So yeah, that's been a real hurdle for me. And I don't really know what to do about it. I'm trying to think about how I could do my own subconscious reprogramming to actually overcome it. Because I do think it's more of something that's in my mind as opposed to being in my body. So yeah, that's been something that has definitely affected me profoundly. And also I think I've often, been worried about, really meeting my basic needs, shelter, food, work, things like that. And that has definitely had an impact on how I sleep. And then my bladder is the first kind of part of me that is affected by it. And so to actually, increase my comfort over the last few years, I've really invested a lot in my bed. And I have a bed that I consider to be super comfortable. I have lots of pillows. I have a weighted blanket, which is something that I really highly recommend if you are suffering with insomnia, anxiety. I have a blanket that is 7 kilos, and it's like having a warm hug all night long. And the great thing is that when I do have nights of insomnia, I'm just feeling very comfortable in my bed and hugging my pillows and thinking, oh, I love my bed. So that helps. That means that my thoughts are quite positive as opposed to being, kind of frantic and anxious. I'm always thinking, oh, I love my bed. And also, I have created a lifestyle with no alarm, and that is to try and I've kind of molded my lifestyle around my bad sleeping habits. That's why sleep is a very big part of what the orgasmic lifestyle is about. I think I've shared this story several times, but if you haven't heard it, the idea of this podcast came because I was interviewed by a journalist from Marie Claire, Brazil, and we had a Skype appointment, and she was going to be late for it, and she was emailing me with, she was in panic mode because she was in a traffic jam, and she was going to be late. And then when we got on the call, I just told her casually that I had no alarm since 2009, and she was kind of like, oh my God. And that was the detail of our conversation that she remembered the most, even though we were talking about sex toys, orgasm, and all these other juicy topics. Because when I mentioned to people that I have no alarm, they look at me with disbelief and envy. Oh, I could never do that. But it really is, I would say, the secret, well, it's not obviously not a secret, to my vitality is the fact that most nights I go to bed and I don't really think about the time I have to wake up. So if I do take a while to fall asleep, it doesn't really matter because I'll just wake up whenever my body says. There are no alarms. And those nights or days when I do have to, get up early, I don't sleep as well. So, and also I really like my slow mornings, meditation, reading, breakfast, and I like to have that time. I don't like to be rushed in that time. So slow mornings really suit me, and I don't really get any real work done until after 11 o'clock. But I know different people have different rhythms, so I've kind of created a lifestyle around my own limitations, and I've kind of tried to leverage them to make it quite an enviable lifestyle, to be honest. And so for the most part, I actually sleep quite well these days, just because I'm quite calm. And also I meditate so much, and I think meditation has been one of the best things I've done, or the best practices that I can recommend for many, many reasons. And I meditate before sleep and also upon waking, and then several times throughout the day as well. So that's something that really does help me. I use the app Insight Timer. I'm also a teacher on there, so I create my own affirmations and guided visualizations. But I don't really listen to my own stuff at night. I listen to this amazing channel called Sleep Spells, and it's so good. It's all these different solfeggio frequencies, and it's very ambient, so it's not with any words or anything like that. But there have been times when I've been doing guided meditations before bed, but now I just prefer to have music and just let myself drift off. And I tend to kind of zone out when a meditation from Insight Timer is playing, and then just at the end I kind of wake up again, go to the loo, and then go to sleep. Then in the morning I listen to my own affirmations. Usually today I listen to my I am magnetic ones, which has been quite cool. But sleep is a real issue for many people, and for me, it's something that has been something that is quite hard. Has been quite hard for me. And at the moment, I'm actually sleeping naturally, which is amazing, because I'm really glad that I've managed to avoid, getting addicted to sleeping pills or anything like that. And there was a time when that was almost possible. And it's crazy because I have private healthcare here in Spain, even though the public system is pretty good. I remember going to my private doctor. I mean, the difference of a private doctor is that they spend a lot more time with you. So you can kind of go into more depth during an appointment. And years ago, when I was having some anxious meltdown, I was prescribed Xanax, and he told me to have one pill 3 times a day, one every 8 hours, now for 2 weeks. And I was thinking, I'm not going to do that. It doesn't sound like a good idea. And so I just took this prescription and decided to use this medication on rare occasions when, I really wasn't sleeping. If I got to 4 a.m. and I'm not sleeping, something that's kind of quite extreme. So a packet would last me a year. So I would go back every year and get a new prescription. And he was saying to me, I had the lowest dosage as well. So that's what I do usually if I really can't sleep, but I try to avoid that. And when I came out of hospital a few years ago, I was given a prescription that actually, when I went, for sleeping pills, because I just thought I really needed them. But then when I went to the pharmacy, they refused to give me them because apparently the type of prescription I had wasn't for anything that was like for sleeping pills. It was just for other things. I can't remember. I don't really know how to describe the classification of it. And also my brain is kind of not quite working today because I haven't slept quite well. But that was I remember being really angry with the pharmacist, but now I can see it was a blessing in disguise, because I probably would have started to have this really bad habit of having sleeping pills every night. So I'm glad I don't have to. That's not my reality, fortunately. So what's been really interesting about sleeping for me lately is that I have these really vivid dreams. And when I wake up in the morning, when they're so vivid with lots of details that are quite intriguing to me and a bit far out, I actually ask ChatGPT to analyze them, which is super interesting. And a lot of them lately, I've been dreaming about keys and transportation, especially things like flying or being on ferries and things like that. And I'll often dream about my suitcase. It's just so weird. But yeah, they have pretty good meanings in general, the dreams that I'm having. But yes, I could have spoken to our guest today for a much longer time than we did, because when I saw Morgan Adams on LinkedIn, I decided to reach out to her to interview her, because I was so interested about what does a sleep coach do, and myths about sleeping and all of this. It's such an important part of life, and when we don't have a good night's sleep, it can really, really affect your day and beyond, and your health as well. So there is an effect that we don't quite see on the surface. So that's super, super interesting. So I hope you enjoy our chat today, and I'm hoping that I am going to sleep much better tonight, and I hope that you do too. What if your pleasure was the portal to your power? My new book, Orgasmic Manifestation, Transform Your Life with Your Sexual Energy, by Venus O'Hara, that's me. This is your guide to using desire as a tool for abundance, purpose, and deep self-connection. Your orgasm is more than a moment. It's a message, a manifestation, a mirror of your limitless potential. Available now on Amazon. Link in the show notes below. Now it's time for this episode's interview. We speak with Morgan Adams, who is a sleep coach. Morgan Adams, welcome to the Orgasmic Lifestyle Podcast. It's a real pleasure to have you here. For those who are unfamiliar with your work, could you tell us what you do?
Yes, I am a sleep coach for women, and I have been doing this for coming up on 4 years.
Wow. So, sleep coach, that's why I was so intrigued about this profession. What inspired you to follow this path?
Well, I actually had a long bout of insomnia myself, stemming back about 18 years ago. I had a relationship struggle, and that kind of led into a big insomnia episode that had me trouble falling asleep for a long time. It took me like 1 or 2 hours to fall asleep. And after a few months of this, I decided I was not comfortable with this anymore, and I went to my primary care doctor, and I was given Ambien, which is a very popular sleeping medication, and ended up taking that for about 8 years. It helped me get to sleep a little bit faster, but it had a lot of really nasty side effects the next day, and we can delve more into that later. But that's
Mm.
really kind of how I got interested in sleep, and I decided to take myself off of the sleeping pills about 8 years into taking them. I'd met a guy who is now currently my husband, and
Oh.
in the beginning stages of our relationship, he said, "Gosh, when you take those sleeping pills, you kind of turn into a zombie, and it's a little bit freaky." So
Mm.
he very gently called me out on that, and that was sort of like my turning point of saying, "Uh-oh, maybe these pills are not serving me well." So I just a cautionary tale about the pills is that if you're taking some kind of medication, especially like a sleeping pill or a psychiatric medication, it's really in your best interest if you want to come off of it to work with your prescribing provider who will give you some direction on how to taper off the medication. So just, don't go rogue like I did. I didn't know
Mm.
any better and I did it. And fortunately, I came out okay on the other side and survived it fine and slept well for a long time. And then there was a plot twist, and that plot twist was something that we collectively experienced all together as a
Um,
community in March of
Really? Yeah.
2020. Yeah, March of 2020, first couple months of the pandemic, nobody knew what was going on, and my sleep started to really suffer a lot during that period of time because of all the unknowns in the world. And I decided that I was not going to go back to that world of insomnia that I had experienced many years ago. So I decided to get an Aura ring to track my sleep. I started to Google sleep and found a lot of useful tips for me online that I applied to myself, and I got my sleep situated pretty quickly and started sharing organically on Facebook. There was no business at this point. It was just me kind of fascinated with what I was doing. And while I was sharing these interesting tidbits on Facebook, I found out from friends they were having trouble sleeping too. And then the wheels started turning, and I thought, huh, this actually is a real big issue with women. And I've experienced it and helped myself through it. Why can't I help other people through this?
Mm.
So that's really kind of how I ended up where I am now, helping women who have insomnia and want to get better sleep. So it's sort of the pain to purpose path
Mm.
that I think a lot of coaches embark on, in
Definitely
my
the wounded
experience.
healer, definitely sorting out
Yeah,
your own problem first. Yeah.
exactly.
There's one question about the pills. Do you think over time you need to have stronger doses? I mean, for things to work. And when your partner said you turned into a zombie, was that when you were sleeping or was that when you were awake?
Mm.
What was he referring
Good
to?
questions. Yeah, that's a good one. So I did not actually have to increase my dosage over time.
Mm.
Some people do, but I didn't. And thinking back on the clients that I've worked with, I don't really recall that they were increasing their dosages either. But I think there are some people who do. And as far as the zombie-like effect, so it was shortly after I took the medication. It was like it's hard to describe, but it was just like I had no like soul. It was just like I was a robot is basically kind of how I would describe it. Um, you may have heard in the past people doing really weird things after they've taken a sleeping pill.
Oh, wow.
I did a couple of those weird things. I would sometimes eat unknowingly, like I didn't realize I was eating. The
Uh,
next morning there was like a bag of, cookies, and I was
So you
like,
were
oh my God,
sleepwalking? You actually got up
well,
out of bed, or
well,
what?
I
How?
actually didn't get out of bed to eat, but I ate before I went to bed.
You didn't remember.
Um, and I didn't remember. And, unfortunately, there are cases of people who have done even more harmful things. They've gotten into cars and driven, and they've done, it's so basically what happened in 2019 is there was a black box label put on these class of medications called Z drugs, the Ambien, Lunesta, Sonata. And the black box was placed upon these medications because people were doing things that were harmful to themselves and other people. Imagine if you got in your car and you had an
Wow.
accident and killed yourself or somebody else. That's really, really tragic. So these medications, they seem so benign in many ways, but there is kind of a dark side to the medications. If you look at the overall use and misuse of them, they were really meant for short-term use. If you look at the bottle,
Mm,
it does say they're not meant to be used more than 4 weeks. They're meant to be a short-term crutch, if you will. Yet, a lot of people are taking them for years. I've worked with patients who, excuse me, clients who have taken them for 10, 15, 20 years.
wow.
It's a long time, and they weren't meant to be used for that long of a time.
Yeah, because if you miss out, if you've got none left, then you can't sleep at all, and because you become ex dependent on it, would you say?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah, you can
they're
definitely.
physically addictive as well.
Well, there's some, it's more of a psychological dependence, but
Mm,
there can be some physical dependencies as well. So sometimes when people stop taking them abruptly, they'll get something called rebound insomnia because our brain is conditioned to have that medication, and when that brain is deprived of it, it's sort of like what's going on. So that's why it's not a great idea to stop abruptly. Ideally you want to do a slow taper, and it's very methodical and something that really should be supervised by a physician. So when I work with my clients, I'm not a doctor, and I'm very upfront about that. I'm very upfront that I'm not a healthcare practitioner. So what I do is I have the doctor share a taper schedule that he or she wants to use with my client.
mhm,
And then we implement that together. My client and I implement it together. And I'm really the support system for the client, helping the client learn new behaviors and skills and attitudes so that they are more confident in their ability to sleep while they're tapering off the medications.
mm,
There are some times when, honestly, the doctor doesn't really have a clue as to what taper schedule to use. So I have a few that I kind of look at as reliable, and I will write that out and present it to the doctor. Well, the patient will, I
mm,
don't directly, the patient will provide it to the doctor. And the doctor's typically like, yeah, sure, that looks fine. Because they haven't really had like a lot of, most of them haven't had too much experience with the tapers.
mm,
But I definitely recommend a slow taper
mm.
for people coming off.
This podcast was inspired by my own insomnia, by the way. That's probably why
Oh,
I wanted to speak
really?
to you. Yeah, because I was always struggle with my sleep, and I think I've moved around to so many different apartments. I've had a lot of struggles with just trying to make basic ends meet in the past. And when I started this journey of becoming a content creator, it was 16 years ago. And I decided to create a no alarm life. So I've had no alarm for the last 16 years. So I just go to bed and then I wake up when I wake up. And I have a lot of self-compassion because my audience is US based. I don't have to kind of get up really early. I make sure my all my appointments are in the afternoon. So I can really listen to my body. And it's interesting because I sleep less but better quality. And
Mm,
because before then I would be having nocturia. I still have a bit of nocturia, which is
uh-huh.
going to the loo quite a lot at
Yeah.
night. And then sometimes it takes a long time to go to sleep. But knowing that I can just sleep and not have to worry, that just gives me a lot of peace and a lot of energy, actually. So like
Yeah.
the days I have alarm, I have to use an alarm, I can really notice the difference. But I just really do sleep quite well, and to get into bed and But anyway, the reason why it inspired by this podcast is a few years ago I had an interview with Marie Claire Brazil. We were supposed to talk about female sexuality, and the person who was going to interview me, she was in a car traffic accident, or so, not traffic accident, a traffic jam. Sorry, a bit terrible
Oh.
Freudian slip there. She's in a traffic jam, and she's all stressed. And then when she got on the call, she said, "I'm so sorry, I was in my car and all this." And I was like, "I'm so sorry, I'm late." I'm like, "Oh, don't worry, I was. I never get up. I have a no alarm life." And that was the detail of our conversation that she
Uh-huh.
remembered the most. And I just thought, wow, I need to share more about my lifestyle with people, because like having no alarm just seems like a luxury to so many people.
Yeah, I mean, I
Um,
think the idea of not having alarm is really appealing,
mm,
because it really means that you're tuning into your own rhythms,
mm,
right? And you're honoring your own body and when it's ready to be woken up. You're relying
yeah,
on your own cues.
yeah,
Yeah, and it's just yeah, unfortunately, the way society works, with a lot of people, with kids getting to school and jobs, it's like we are kind of somewhat forced into a life where we need an alarm, and
yeah.
it can be quite jarring. I personally, I have a really strong circadian rhythm and a very like a strong predisposition to wake up early in the morning.
Mm,
And my body will, I mean, and it's kind of been this way all my life, really. I think back to my teenage years, back, I don't know if you did this, but I did when in my 20s or, early, I would go out to clubs and
mm.
I would stay out till like 2 or 3 in the morning. And I was the kid who didn't sleep in really. I still got up early because my body wanted to get up. And that has kind of continued and gotten even stronger as I've gotten older and my circadian rhythm has shifted earlier. So basically, I don't really need an alarm any
Mm.
either. It just kind of happens, and it's kind of nice to be able to like not have to rely on that. Now, there are certain times when you're catching a really early flight,
Oh yeah. Mm.
and those are the times, like to your point, that makes me angry. I don't sleep as well. I feel anxious because I know I have to be up at a certain time. And there's a little bit of a fragmented sleep that happens. And I think that's very common for a lot of people to have
Yeah, definitely. And
before
also, I think
flight.
here in Spain, I think going to bed very early is kind of incompatible with the culture because people have
Yeah,
dinner 9 o'clock, sometimes 10 o'clock at night, really late, and then people are quite loud. So there's like TV noise until 1 a.m.
yeah,
So if you want to get up at
yeah,
6 or something, you're not going to have a very rested night. Did you have
yeah,
any tips about which alarms would be the most or the least jarring to your
mm,
system?
yeah. I think that there are one alarm that is coming to mind. Like I said, I've never really had to use an alarm like this, but some clients that I've worked with have used something called the hatch alarm. And it's a sunrise simulating alarm. So basically, what happens is the light on the alarm starts to get brighter.
Ah.
It's sort of to simulate a sunrise, like a natural wake up from the sun. I think that's probably one of the least jarring ways of waking up. Um, there are different sounds that you can program on your phone or whatnot that are like more like chimes.
Mm.
And those can be nice. I did see a post by somebody recently. It was really funny. It was all about the worst alarms. There's an alarm called Clocky,
Oh,
Clocky. And it basically, when it goes off, it like hops across the room so that you literally have to
get
chase it
out.
down to like, to make you get out of bed. So like the premise is like if you're out of bed, you're probably going to stay out of bed. You're not going to get back into bed. But there are a lot of really odd kind of contraptions for alarms to like make it so that people have to make it so that people can't ignore their alarm.
Mm.
Um, I have a cooling mattress pad that I've been using for a couple years, and it has a feature that's called I don't know what it's called exactly, but basically it heats up at a certain time that you want to get up. So sometimes I'll use that feature to wake me up. To the gentle heat is sort of like a circadian friendly way of waking you up, and it's not jarring at all. So like whatever you do, try to make it the least jarring to your nervous system as possible.
Wow. And what about these different sleep tech tools? I mean, so many things right now. Is there anything that you enjoy a lot? Because you said that you
Oh
mentioned the
yeah.
Aura Ring. Is that just sleep
Yeah.
giving you biofeedback so you can track your
Yeah, I'm really I'm quite interested in sleep technology, but I don't always recommend it for everybody. So sort of and I can tell you which of the ones I use, but really my philosophy for sleep technology is this. If you're on an optimization journey with your sleep, what I recommend first is the basics, like, and we can talk about some of those, but the free, actionable, easier things that are within everyone's reach, right?
Mhm.
There, start with those things first, and then gradually kind of go to the next level if you want to with the tech stuff.
Mm.
Um,
So what would be
because
the
it
first
doesn't,
levels? What would those things
yeah.
be?
So the first levels of that would be number one, waking up at a consistent time in the morning,
Mm.
give or take a half hour. Keeping that regular sleep wake cycle is pretty important. Also, getting natural light in the morning is a really important way to manage and enhance your circadian rhythm. Because when you see that natural light in the morning, now it has to be outside. It can't be through a window. The light actually needs to hit your retina to send that signal to your circadian pacemaker. That's a really strong signal telling your body and brain the day has started. Start doing daytime things. It helps set that healthy cortisol and melatonin pulse. Um, so things like that that are all those are free and actionable things that people can do. Because I really I don't want people I want people to learn good behaviors, like good sleep behaviors, and um, before they get to the investments in like the cooling mattress pads or all of the technology. I mean, like the technology is great. And as far as sleep trackers, that's kind of a different story in a way because I think that they can be beneficial for a lot of people who are starting a sleep journey and want to really figure out what are the things that are impacting their sleep because you can clearly see those on your dashboard of your tracker. You can see you can connect the dots and you can think, okay, my sleep score is not good today. I had 3 glasses of wine after 9 o'clock.
Mhm.
Wonder why, so people, it's a really obvious way. If you're open to it, you have to be, no one can make you do these things, but if you are able to connect the dots, then you can change your behaviors and kind of optimize your sleep in that way.
Mhm. Any big sleep myths that you'd like to debunk or that people hear and then you're
Yes.
thinking absolutely not because you've researched the topic?
Yeah, a really big one that I hear all the time is about getting 8 hours of sleep. There's this, I call it the myth of 8 hours, and it is a myth. And so where this comes from, I believe, is the fact that in the United States, the National Sleep Foundation has recommendations on sleep quantity times for adults 18 to 64. They're saying 7 to 9 hours is the appropriate amount. So I think that 8 is big in the middle. So I think 8 gets pushed out a lot. And I will see so much content around sleep because I'm a sleep coach. It'll be like just such a push. Like the ads are like, get 8 hours or else. If you really look at the fine print of those recommendations from the Sleep Foundation, it says between 6 and 10 hours could be appropriate.
Mm.
So basically, if you're hearing, I've got to get 8 hours, you may be stressed out because, like, I personally rarely produce 8 hours of sleep. My body likes to produce about 7 hours and 15 minutes. I've I've run the stats over 5 years. That's where my body likes to be. And so if you don't know that 8 hours is a myth, you may think to yourself, "Oh my gosh, I only sleep 7 hours. Where's that extra hour? I got to get that." And then you're like stressing yourself out about it, and you don't even need that extra hour of sleep. And what's even really more interesting, Venus, is that about a year ago, there was a huge study, thousands and thousands of people, where they were able to find that consistency with your sleep is a bigger predictor of all-cause mortality than duration.
Wow.
So what they're finding now is that the consistency is really even more important than the duration. So not to say that duration doesn't matter, it still matters.
Mm.
But the consistency piece is a really, really big one that I think we're going to find being a bigger talking point in public health communications moving forward.
Would that mean the consistency of the time or the same bed or what
Oh, good.
exactly?
Yeah.
Because it
Thank
could be
you.
lots of things.
Thank you for making me clarify this because I get in my little bubble. It's consistency of time. Yeah.
Okay.
It's having that same. So basically, what we're kind of aiming for in terms of our sleep-wake cycle is to keep it consistent plus or minus 30 minutes.
Mm.
So you have a little bit of a leeway here. So, for example, your wake up time would be, I'm just throwing this out there. I have no idea what time you wake up, but like your wake up time would be between 7 and 7:30,
Mm.
and your bedtime would be between 10 and 10:30. And that's kind of what you stick to as your parameters. That's really what the consistency piece is pointing toward. So you
Mm.
can sleep in whatever bed you want. Although
Well, that's
I,
like the next question
yeah,
actually, because it can be really hard. I mean, I find that obviously I sleep best when I'm in my own bed because I've invested a lot in comfort because I've
yeah.
suffered a lot with sleep. So I've for me like the best mattress I could find. I have a mattress topper. I have five pillows, like one here, two here, two underneath the legs. I'm just like even
Yeah.
if I can't sleep, I'm just like, oh, my bed is amazing. I'm really grateful for my bed. And another thing that's really helped me as well is a weighted blanket. I mean, I just find those so comforting. I just feel like it's a hug all
Yeah.
night. So,
Yeah.
but if I'm sleeping in a different environment, I also like the room to be very dark. But if I'm
Yes.
in a different environment, I find that I suffer a lot, and that's when I bring my sleeping pills with me and
Hmm.
my
Hmm.
earplugs and night mask. Because obviously, if I go to England, for example, in the summer, it can get light at 4 a.m. or 3, like
Yeah.
compared to Spain where it's night all night, until
Right.
7 or something. So
Right.
it's a big change for me now. So
Yeah. It can be really challenging for a lot of people with travel.
mm,
And, what I'm seeing is that there are more and more hotels that are becoming sleep-friendly hotels. And
mm,
they're really sleep forward and health forward. So, for example, there's a hotel in New York City called the Equinox Hotel, and it is really, really, they've pulled out all the stops as far as like circadian friendly lighting in the room, like the light dims down, and they've really done their homework in terms of making the bedroom a sleep friendly environment. And that's great because I think people are starting to wake up, no pun intended,
mm,
to the fact that sleep is so important for our health. And why not enjoy that good sleep while you're traveling, if possible? So um, it gets a little bit tricky when you're staying at Airbnbs. That's a little bit of a challenge because that's mainly where I've been staying lately when I travel.
mm,
And the Airbnbs tend to not have as friendly of a sleep arrangement. So I travel with the eye mask, I travel with the electric tape
mm.
to put over the appliances and stuff like that, and try to get the room cool as I can. So there are some tricks, but yeah, there's um, most people just really like their own friendly home bed setup, and it sounds like
Yeah.
yours is just amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing. But another thing, well, we talk about relationships a lot on this podcast. Another thing that can be really challenging is sleep compatibility with a partner. I mean, do
Yeah.
you have any tips about that? Because there's
Yeah.
so many things that can go wrong. Someone can be snoring, someone might want to snuggle, the other one doesn't. Someone steals the blanket. One thing that really worked with me a few years ago with an ex of mine is that we used to have separate duvets. I think that's quite a Scandinavian thing, is to have,
Yeah.
that's a brilliant tip. If anyone's listening,
Yeah. I'm
it's a really
glad you
good
brought that
tip.
up. It's
Mm.
called the Scandinavian sleep method, I
Uh-huh.
believe. And it is about having two separate duvets or comforters so that each person can get coverage appropriately for them, and then also the weight of the duvet.
Mm.
So some people that's another topic altogether. But some people like the really heavy ones, some people like the light ones. People have different temperature preferences. So I think that's a smart strategy, having the separate duvets. I'm also a fan, if possible, of having a large bed.
Mm.
I know it's not accessible for everyone in terms of space and cost, but since I've been with my husband for 11 years, we've gone from a queen. We graduated from a queen to a king, and now we have a California king. And
Okay, so is that huge?
California king is huge. It's the biggest bed they make that's not custom made.
Oh wow. So you're
And
actually on opposite ends and
we
like
are
do you
on
kind of get to
different,
the middle?
Venus, we're on different continents.
Okay.
And it's
Pretty good
wonderful.
thing for the
And
sleep.
it's what yeah, and it's wonderful. And we both really like our own space. We don't cuddle in
Mm.
bed. It's that the bed is really just for sleeping, and then, intimacy when there's supposed to be intimacy, but
And do you
not a
have
lot
one
of
big duvet, like a huge duvet?
well, we have a something called it's called Muslin Comfort. It's a brand,
Mm.
and it's a oversized cotton muslin blanket that serves as our comforter, and it's temperature regulating. So it's really ideal for um, the layering effect, because I feel like a lot of people overshoot with big, thick duvets. In fact, that's like one of the reasons why people wake up a lot in the night, is because they're too hot. And I
Mm.
think it's because of their duvet. So I
Mm.
think if some people are struggling with the wake ups, they may want to take a look at their covering and see if maybe they could switch out their duvet for maybe layered blankets, thinner blankets that are maybe cotton. Um, so yeah, now I think I forgot your original
Yeah.
question, but I just got so excited about the duvet thing
What
that
about snoring? 'Cause that's been a problem for me a lot of the time, and just
oh,
pushing someone onto the side all the time and then waking you
mm,
up. And also that can cause
yeah,
a lot of tension when, one partner's slept really well and you haven't, and then it causes tension the next day. And I remember once an old family member actually was showing us her newlywed home, and we went into the spare room and we saw like the guy's pajamas, and it was like they were kind of hiding that they weren't actually sleeping in the same bed.
yeah,
But I mean, these sleep divorces, as they're called, they're quite common and they kind of save marriages.
yeah. The sleep divorce is a really interesting phenomenon. I think the latest statistic is that 25% of couples sleep apart.
Oh wow.
Now, the term sleep divorce is, not my favorite term. There's a woman named Dr. Wendy Troxel who wrote a book called Sharing the Covers. I highly recommend this book to anyone who's struggling with sleep in terms of a partnership,
Mm.
because she delves deep into this and how and fixes and solutions. But basically, what she's saying is that, and I'm taking all this from her book because she's the
Mm.
leading expert, so I'm going to just kind of give you the summary. If you have a partner who's snoring, and trust me, in my previous marriage, I was in this scenario. Okay, I had a husband who snored, and I had insomnia at the same time. So you can imagine that is not a good combination.
Mm.
So what would happen is he would snore. I would creep off to the guest bedroom, sleep there, and then in the morning he would become upset with me because I went out of the bed. And I was like, well, I had to sleep. If you weren't snoring, I wouldn't have had to.
Mm.
So it was like I was pointing the finger at him. He was getting defensive. He eventually, went to the doctor and got that solved. But the approach that one should be taking if a partner is snoring is one of, we have a shared problem. Let's find a solution together because it's a problem for both of us, right? So instead of putting someone on the defensive, it's like a cooperation effort, right? And one of the things that I don't think a lot of people consider, at least in my circles of friends that I'm talking with about this, is that if the husband is, and it's usually I'm stereotyping a little bit,
Yeah.
admittedly, but it's often the husband who's snoring.
Mm.
If the husband is snoring or the male partner, then there's a pretty decent chance they may have a sleep breathing issue like sleep apnea, in which case they need to get that looked at through a sleep study. And then if they have apnea, they need to have it managed with a CPAP or an oral appliance or an implanted device or something. There's so many ways of dealing with sleep apnea these days. Um, it's a health issue. I mean, untreated sleep apnea kills people. People die of heart attacks and strokes from untreated sleep apnea. It's no joke.
Wow.
So it's a critical health issue, as well as an inconvenience to somebody's sleep. So it's really in the approach, Venus.
Mm.
It can't be a divisive, blaming, finger pointing situation. And I raised my hand as being guilty of that in my younger years, and I didn't know. I didn't know
Mm.
any better. But of course, if you are sleep deprived or you have insomnia, what's happening is that your your emotional regulation takes a hit. And so it's only natural that you're going to lash out a little bit at your partner. You're not going to have that degree of empathy or sensitivity. So the words you choose and the tone you use may be, unbeknownst to you, offensive, and
Mm.
although you don't mean it to be, right?
Definitely. But also going to bed with those expectations of like, I'm not going to sleep well. Let's make sure the guest
Mm,
room's ready just in case. And you're already having that in your
yes.
mind and
Oh,
everything's
yes.
amplified at nighttime. Everything seems a million
It's,
times worse. But a few
yes,
years
it
ago,
is.
quite a few years ago, actually, I lived with a guy, who used to get up at 5 a.m. for work and I had to get up at 8. So we
Oh.
slept apart in the week and it was amazing because I had my room and he had his room. Then at the weekend we slept together and he was tidier than me. So we always slept in his bed at the weekend, but then we slept in late and all of that. And it was really cool because in the week we would snuggle on the sofa and before bed, and then just go to our respective bedrooms.
Yeah,
Um,
I
yeah.
love that approach. In fact, I have a former client who has the exact same approach. She and her husband sleep separately during the weekday, and on the weekend they sleep in the same bed, and they're very happy. They're very happy with their relationship. And just for anyone out there, who's thinking about sleeping apart, it does not reflect on the quality of your relationship.
Mm,
I think there's still a little bit of a stigma attached to sleeping apart, and I would love for that to not happen as much because there's nothing wrong with it because we have to prioritize the sleep that we're getting, and if that means sleeping apart, well then so be it.
mm. Definitely. It's actually keep the spark alive a bit more as well. As
Yeah,
long as
there
you're having
you
that
go.
come together at the weekend, I mean, if it was every
Yeah.
night, I think you would miss out. But having that coming together was almost like the honeymoon period, lasting a
Yeah,
lot
it can create a
longer.
little more excitement. Yeah, for sure.
Mm. So you're especially specializing in women then. Is there anything you can share about hormones and how that affects sleep?
Yeah. So, women tend to suffer with sleep issues more than men, and we're about 40% more likely to have insomnia. And there are a few reasons why we're struggling with sleep more than men are. Number one is the hormones. As we get into midlife, perimenopause and menopause, our hormone fluctuations are really in effect. Lower progesterone, lower estrogen, those create some sleep fragmentation. And sometimes people will deal with that by going on hormone replacement therapy. That's a whole other ball of wax. But
Mm,
that's something that a lot of people are leaning in on. There's also the fact that women in midlife tend to have more mood disorders, specifically anxiety and depression, and those can actually leave you more vulnerable to sleep issues. And then, the last reason why I think women have more struggles with sleep, and especially in midlife, is sociocultural reasons. So, for example, if you think about a 50-year-old woman who has sleep issues, take a look at her family constellation. She may have a teenager still living at home that she's responsible for taking care of. And then on the other spectrum, she may be caring for aging parents. They may need help with getting to appointments and being looked after. And then on top of all that, she might be at the height of her career. She may be a manager at a company, or she may be an entrepreneur. And there's a lot of competing demands. A lot of people call this the sandwich generation.
Mm.
So those demands and that stress can really take a toll on people's sleep. So yeah, we definitely tend to be a little at a bit of a disadvantage when it comes to sleep.
I just think about it from like, when we were lived in caves and the men were hunting all day and they were obviously really tired. And then we had to kind of attend to children who weren't sleeping through the night. So
Yeah.
you have to have half
Yeah.
an eye open just in case anything
Yeah. Well,
happens.
I
So,
mean, I never had children, but I've have plenty of friends and clients with children, and a lot of people will tell me that after they had kids, they were never quite as sound of a sleeper because they could kind of train their brain to be hyper vigilant for sounds, right? And that's like completely evolutionary. And it's interesting how that sometimes that behavior will stick with us, even though the children are grown or the
mm,
children are not dependent on us. They can kind of help themselves out, right? So it's pretty interesting.
yeah. And I was growing up, like my mum couldn't go to sleep until we're all back home and in bed.
Yes, yes.
If we
I
all start
remember my
going
mom.
out.
Yeah, my mom said that too. And now, now I'm like, oh, why was I so bad about coming home late? I should have been more respectful, saved her sleep, right?
So, any natural supplements that you recommend? We're talking about, the fake pills at the beginning, but there's anything kind of natural that you recommend that's for sleep, like
Yeah.
valerian or
Well,
melatonin or things like that?
there are a lot of supplements out there. And what I typically, I have a sort of a philosophy on supplements as well, and that's really supplements. So if you're using supplements as like your first line of defense in a sleep issue, you're kind of majoring in the minors, right? So
Mm,
it all goes back to some of those basic behaviors we talked about,
mm,
the consistency, the natural light during the day and the morning. Now, if you're doing all of these things and you're still sort of like, okay, I could use better sleep. I think it's great to delve into the world of supplements. I just wouldn't say use a supplement as your first step.
mm,
So there's so many supplements out there. My gosh, because I'm a sleep coach, I get ads for them all the time. It's just incredible, like how many there are. But there are a few kind of there are a couple basics that I think are kind of I don't want to say tried and true because it depends on who you ask, but
mm,
there's a lot of controversy about melatonin.
mm,
And in the sleep field, it seems to be very divisive. There are a lot of people who are like, no, don't take melatonin. It's bad. There's a myth about melatonin that I feel has been perpetuated. And one of the myths is that if you take it exogenously through a pill, your body won't produce its own natural
oh,
supply,
wow.
right? That's one of the fears that a lot of people share about melatonin. But when you do the research, what you find is that there's no real evidence that that's happening for people. So I don't think you need to worry about your body suppressing its own production of melatonin by taking your own exogenous dose through a pill. Um, Melatonin is an incredible antioxidant. And I think that, I look at melatonin as really more of a circadian nutrient
Mm,
than something just for quote sleep, right? So it's doing a lot of things on the back end. It's helping regulate mitochondria. It's lowering our core body temperature, and we actually need that lower core body temperature to initiate sleep. So it's helpful for that purpose. Um, It's something that is used outside of sleep. I don't know if you've heard that, like back in the pandemic, there was a lot more talk about melatonin because of its antioxidant capabilities.
I do it for
People were,
anti-aging. I've heard about it for anti-aging.
yeah,
Yeah.
anti-aging. When I had breast cancer several years
Wow.
ago, I was given, I think, a 10 milligram dose of melatonin,
That's a
which I
lot.
took. It's a lot, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, as far as like double digit doses of melatonin, the the people who I look to as the melatonin experts, they're sort of pointing to the fact that we don't have like a lot of long-term studies with larger doses of melatonin for a long time. So, treating a cancer and incorporating a higher dose of melatonin for a short period of time, probably no big deal. But if you're like ongoing taking 10 milligrams of melatonin year after year, I'm not sure about that. So the the sort of standard dose for kind of improving our circadian rhythm is zero point 0.3 milligrams to 1 milligram. That's a
Mm,
very small dose. And in my opinion, there is somewhat of a use case for melatonin in midlife. So let's just say 50 plus.
mm.
There's a graph. In fact, I posted it on LinkedIn today
Oh,
if you
well.
want to go look at it. It's basically a graph of the melatonin throughout our life. And you can see in the graph, it's like a curved graph. Melatonin just kind of starts to tank.
Mm,
50 plus, it's just going downhill. And in my opinion, you're microdosing with a melatonin of, zero point 0.3 to 1 in that time of your life. You're just supplementing what you've lost.
mm,
I don't think it's a huge deal. And so I personally do take melatonin on a regular basis and have for a couple years.
mm,
I'm 55, so I'm definitely at the
mm,
age where, if you measured my melatonin, it might not be as robust as it was in my 40s.
mm,
So that's kind of my stance on melatonin. Magnesium is another supplement that's often recommended for sleep. It's a relatively benign um, supplement that I think a lot of people find helpful. Personally, I never noticed any differences using it, but my husband, for example, definitely notices his sleep improves with excuse me,
magnesium.
magnesium.
Mm,
So I feel like that if you're going to experiment with something, magnesium's pretty benign, and there are different, like I think there's maybe 8 different types of magnesium. Kind of, I'm not sure what they're called, but like there's magnesium citrate, glycinate, threonate, malate. The glycinate and the threonate are probably the most beneficial for sleep and calming the brain and helping with anxiety. So, and they're readily available. I mean, it's magnesium supplements are all over the place. I think that just with supplementation in general, I would always recommend that somebody purchase a supplement from a company that does third-party testing.
mm.
Um, I'm not a big fan of the big box stores, the Costco's and the supplements that they sell because I feel like there could be some additive ingredients that may not be as healthy.
Yeah, like
So,
talc and gelatin and things like
yeah,
that.
stuff like that may not really benefit us overall. So just,
Mm.
just be choosy about where you get your supplements, whether it's sleep or for something else.
Well, years ago, melatonin was not available in Europe. You couldn't buy it here. So I had to
Yeah,
get
I
it
heard
in,
that.
I had to get that in the States. First time I heard about it, I was actually in Argentina and I was introduced to it because of jet lag actually. So that's kind of
Mm,
people who
yeah,
work shifts use it. People who need to sleep in the day because they're not getting that circadian, that message from the brain that it's now dark, it's nighttime.
yeah.
So that, and what I found though, the kind of strangest side effect was actually with dreams. They can be very weird
Mm,
and disturbing.
hmm
But something
Yeah.
that I've found, I mean, I dream a lot every night. Have you got any information about dreams and what does it mean to remember your dreams? I mean, does it mean you're sleeping well?
Dreams are a topic I have not really studied closely. It's that
Mm,
they were not really part of the curriculum that I followed for sleep and health coaching. But what I can share though is that we dream most in our REM phase of sleep. And our REM phase of sleep is usually at the last half of the night.
Mm.
So quite often we will wake up and remember our dreams because we were woken up during the REM phase and our dreams are really fresh in our heads. Um, the dreams, if you, I'm sure everyone's experienced this, you wake up and it's like so vivid,
Mm.
and then you want to recall it, you want to hold on to that. But if you don't write it down, it will literally just fly out of your head, by the time you get out of bed. It's pretty wild how that happens. So, yeah, there's a lot. I mean, I've heard some interesting podcasts about dreams, but it's not really a topic that I'm like addressing a lot with my clients.
Mm.
But
I'm doing.
it's a fascinating subject.
Is really fascinating. And actually, there was a time when I was actually keeping a dream diary, and I actually remembered them
Oh,
for longer. And what was interesting, what I'm doing now is when I have vivid dreams, I actually ask ChatGPT, what does this mean? So
how
I'm getting, yeah,
interesting.
because obviously you can Google it, but
I
they don't.
love
If you've got very
that.
weird dreams, then they don't always know how to, But it just has all this interpretations that are kind of
Oh my
interesting.
gosh. Well, I've never, okay, so another use for ChatGPT. I'm like collecting use cases for it. I think it's so fun.
Oh yeah, for
Have you
sure.
had any, have you gleaned any interesting findings, or has ChatGPT gleaned any interesting findings about your
Yeah,
dreams?
some of it I'm dreaming about keys and
Keys. Okay.
thinking that, I haven't got the key, but I did have the key all along, that kind of thing. So what you're dreaming of is within your reach and it's,
Oh, I
things like
see.
that.
Yes.
And I have a lot of dreams about transport. For
Mm,
example, always quite calm, but that's an indicator as well, whether you're on, let's say, a ferry, if it is
yeah.
it calm sailing or not, do you feel, at risk or in danger? So I've always had a lot of feeling like I'm getting on somewhere and I've lost my suitcase, and I'm like, I actually remembered it. So I've had a lot of with my suitcase,
Uh-huh.
but then I've woken up, or not
Yeah.
woken up, but within the dream I've realized that, oh, it's just a dream. It doesn't matter. I haven't lost my suitcase. So that's a bit of
Right.
lucid dreaming.
Right.
So a lot of
Yeah.
transport ones have been, and also just I'm getting all these callings to go to New York. I'm kind of often dreaming about that.
Oh my
So
goodness.
yeah.
Well, I'm going to New York in a week. Why don't we meet up?
Yeah, I would love that. Probably going to go in May when I'm just about to publish my fourth book. When I've got the book in my hand, I'll book
Oh,
I'm going to book a
oh,
trip to New York because I really want to
oh,
go. I'm not sure if I'll be able
fun.
to afford the sleep friendly.
Well, yeah, I mean, Venus, my husband and I were planning on staying at this hotel. And I was so excited because I was like, I'm going to do all this content,
Oh yeah.
and then he was in charge of making the reservations, and he said, "Come here a second," and he said, "I know you're going to be disappointed, but we're not staying here because it's $1,000 a night."
Oh wow.
I was like, "Oh no, it's a little steep." Yeah, maybe I'll take a walk through and take some pictures or whatnot. But
If I were you,
oh
I'd definitely be
well.
concentrate. I would definitely contact them to get some exchange
Well,
happening.
I'm
Yeah.
waiting to hear back.
Yeah.
I'm waiting. I know I was trying to pull some strings and
Mm,
promise them some good content, which I totally would do because I think it would be
mm,
fun to show my audience
mm.
the sleep amenities. But
Yeah.
I'll keep you posted. But so far they haven't bitten. My fingers are crossed though.
But also, I've been opening TikTok, and it's just got this New York content that's just chasing me everywhere. And they have these amazing videos of, watching sunrise over Manhattan, from Brooklyn. And it's just like,
Oh,
oh my God. So I think I have to get out of bed. I have to put an alarm
oh
on.
yeah. You'll be on my schedule, right?
Yeah, I guess with
Watching
the
the
jet lag, you,
sunrise.
you kind of messed up with the time, so it's not as challenging getting up, I guess, because if you go to
Yeah,
bed
it could
earlier.
be. Yeah, and
Mm,
if you tip for anyone who's traveling abroad or at least 3 time zones away, there's a really cool app that I recommend to folks called Time Shifter.
no.
It's a free app. Your first trip is free.
Mm,
So after your first trip, you pay, but you essentially plug in your destination, your flight number, just your
mm,
flight number. And then the app uses this algorithm that's used by NASA. So it's a very advanced algorithm, smarter than me, like it's very on point. And it will give you directions on like how to prepare for the trip, like even with light and melatonin and caffeine, how to adapt once you're there. And I just think it's really fascinating that that kind of technology is out there to help us if we're traveling. So you may want to just put that in your back pocket for your next trip abroad.
Definitely. All these free I love biofeedback as well, but it's good to give you a bit of a plan. 'Cause that's the danger, isn't it, when you mention caffeine? It's like when you've had a bad night's sleep and then the next day you're supplementing with caffeine and that can kind of really get you overtired then and you
Yeah,
can't sleep.
so
Mm,
with caffeine, really my guidance on that, if you've had a bad night of sleep, is have the same amount of caffeine that you normally would have.
mm,
Don't overextend your caffeine to compensate for the bad sleep. It will backfire on you. Just have your regular 1 or 2 cups,
mm,
but cut yourself off at a certain time. And that's
mm,
really all the time. I mean, we 60% of people are slow clearers of caffeine, meaning they clear it out of their system slowly. And so there's a gene that dictates how fast you clear the caffeine. And unless you've had your genetics tested, you don't know. So I'm always a proponent of err on the side of caution. And so cutting yourself off from caffeine around noon is really a safe bet for anyone, regardless of like what kind of how well you've slept, just to make sure that you've got that clearance from of caffeine out of your body as you prepare for bed.
mm. Well, actually, I have one in the morning, and that's it when I'm reading my books from my podcast guests usually.
Yeah.
So that's okay for me.
Yeah,
Just one.
that's perfect. I mean, I
Mm,
am I am definitely not one who is anti-caffeine. I have a
mm,
nice big cup myself in the morning and enjoy it thoroughly.
mm,
There's no reason unless there's some kind of health issue or you've got a um, real sensitivity that you should be having to give up your coffee.
yeah, I don't
It's one
think
of life's
one of the
pleasures.
exactly. So a couple of questions I ask all of my guests. What is a book that changed your life? Do you have any books that changed your life?
Wow. So many books. Well, I would say, I'm sorry, probably this is a predictable answer, but it's what comes to mind is the book Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker.
Okay, I've heard
Um,
amazing things about that book.
yeah, it's really amazing. I think it's a great read for somebody who is just interested in the topic of sleep, somebody who wants to optimize their sleep. But there is a caveat to this book, and I feel like I should point it out. It's the kind of book that could actually give somebody with insomnia more anxiety about their sleep. Like
Mm,
if you're the kind of person out there who's like, listen, I'm trying to sleep. I'm like literally giving it all of my effort and I'm not getting enough sleep. Reading Why We Sleep will probably throw you over the edge because he does talk so much about the health consequences of lack of sleep. And I think that that's a whole other topic, but I would probably not read that book if you're actively struggling with insomnia.
mm,
Um, but it's a real deep dive into the whole subject of sleep that I think I've read it probably 3 times right now. And each time I take away something different, just as most people do when they read a book multiple times, you're at different phases in your learning and
mm.
you'll take in different things. But yeah, I think it's a good, solid piece of work.
Amazing. And what is a quote or affirmation that you live by?
I would say always leave people better than you found them. And I
Mm,
don't know who said it, but it really has stuck with me. And basically what that means to me is if you're engaging in an interaction with somebody, you don't want to ever leave the interaction with them feeling worse than they did before they happened upon you, right? So
mm,
that could mean anything from working with a client, like having a session with a client. Like I want the client to feel more positive and uplifted and in a better mood after having a session with me. It could mean that, or it could mean um, buying a cup of coffee at a Starbucks and the interaction I have with the barista. Like I never want that person to, give them a smile, give them a thank you. They'll feel better for that than if
mm.
you were just grumbling,
Yeah,
or complaining about your coffee or whatever.
definitely. That's a good one. And where can people find you?
You can find me on my website, morganadamswellness.com. I have a free guide if you are the kind of person who's struggling with a lot of middle of the night awakenings. It's called Awake Again at 3 a.m., your guide to why you're waking up and what to do about it. It's a free guide. There's also the opportunity to book a discovery call or a consultation with me if you feel like you might be interested in working with a sleep coach. And then I'm really active on Instagram, morganadams.wellness, and then on LinkedIn, I'm Morgan Adams Wellness. So you can find me in
Amazing.
all those places and just feel free to DM me because I just love chatting about sleep.
One of the problems I have with my time zone, because I'm in Spain, it's 9 o'clock now. So I always get
Oh,
so excited about my podcast guests. I just because I'm going into delving into all these different worlds, and my brain can't really switch off. But that's one of the problems I have now because I'm not been sleeping so well the last couple of weeks, but not because I'm worried. It's because I'm excited.
yeah. Yeah. Well, that's a better
Yeah,
reason then.
yeah, definitely. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the orgasmic lifestyle. Hopefully, sleep well tonight.
Thank you. And I hope your sleep is well too tonight.
Thanks. The book I'm reading now is Speaking from the Heart 18 Languages for Modern Love. And this is written by Anne Hodder Ship, who is a future podcast guest. And I read this book last week and it was super interesting to me. And it's very different from uh, the classic 5 love languages. It has nothing to do with the 5 love languages. It's kind of like a new idea on how we express love, how we express, receive, and identify love. And if you're unfamiliar with the 5 love languages, they are words of affirmation, what is it? Acts of service, physical touch, gifts, and quality time. And I think when people talk about the 5 love languages, they often use them to kind of identify how they express love and how they would like to receive love. I know for myself, I would say that physical touch is one of my most indicators, my most profound indicators of feeling love and wanting to kind of give and receive love. Here in Spain, people often greet each other with 2 kisses, and I find that a little bit intrusive in my personal physical space. I don't really like a lot of people coming into my physical space. And but then when I am, let's say, for example, the worst thing about it is when you are meeting new people and you have to, do this 2 kisses on cheeks. And I really hate it when people have got beards. I'm like, oh my God, especially with those smelly beards that people don't take care of, and, rubbing your face against different people. It's just very unhygienic. I don't want to shake hands either. I think that's even worse. But I just don't see why we have to kind of physically touch. I find it super uncomfortable. And the worst thing is when you go to a party and you want to leave and you're like, oh my God, I do not want to kiss 20 people now. But if I just wave, they might think I'm rude. So I try to do air kisses. So I'm kind of doing mwah, mwah, making the noise, but not really having any touch. And that's one thing that was actually good about the pandemic, really, because handshaking was kind of gone. And even in my Toastmasters, we were always shaking people's hands when they coming onto the stage, and we just used to do an elbow bump instead. And also, I always observe people when they go to the toilet and if they wash their hands after. A lot of guys I know don't, and that's like, oh my God, and I'm shaking their hand after. That's just like disgusting. So yeah, I'm not really a physical touch person. However, when I am in love, I am all over someone like a rash. I am so into touch. And I find it really hard when touch is withheld from me, because that can happen when, people are, let's say there's conflict or there's some kind of discomfort in the air. And something I really hate is falling asleep beside someone who just doesn't want to touch you, and it's like you're in the same physical space but you're in a completely different energetic realm. They don't want to connect with you, and I find that very, very how do I say, it just disrupts my peace, I suppose. So for physical touch is something that definitely reassures me. And I know that I've heard people, psychologists, refer to, let's say, snuggling as co-regulation. And I do really believe that. I think physical touch can bring a lot of calm. And I do think that, there have been studies on this, that the more kind of physical touch you have and physical intimacy, the less conflict there is, because there's more closeness. And I think maintaining that physical closeness is super important. I know for me, that's something that's definitely missing from my life at the moment, is touch and that comfort. The other love languages are kind of secondary to me, but it's also, it's good to have a bit of all of them, of course. But I mean, gifts are not. It's nice to have a gift, someone thinking about you and making a kind gesture, but that's probably the least important thing to me. I would say quality time is super important. Words of affirmation, less important, but still nice. And yeah, quality time and acts of service. Yeah, it's good to have acts of service. It's interesting because that's been something that has seduced me with people in the past, when someone starts to help me out a little bit, because I've gone through life as an independent woman for the most part, and then suddenly when I find myself in relationships and a man's kind of helping me out in a practical way, I can kind of like surrender and succumb to that in a way that's like, oh, thank God for that. And I find it can end up seducing me in an emotional way as well, that go beyond the actual individual act of service. I can kind of start to enjoy being looked after, and I really do. I like that. But I do think it's an exchange. I think I like the exchange idea of trading protection from the male with nurturing from the female. That doesn't mean to say that the female can't protect or the male can't nurture, but in general, I do like to have that exchange and feel protected. And I'm a very nurturing person, so I like to express my nurturing, which goes beyond the physical. But yeah, so that's going back to the 5 love languages, which is kind of a more known modality. And as mentioned, these love languages are often part of how people identify the way they express love and the way they need love as well. But this book, the 18 Languages for Modern Love, is very different. They are not identities as such. They are, let's say, practices or expressions. And let me just read a few of them. And for example, this book is it's a very short book. It's about 90 pages. And there's a bit of a forward about how it compares to, for lack of a better word, to the 5 love languages. And it also expresses some limitations about the 5 love languages, that I wasn't aware of personally. And so this actually lists 18 parts of love, which are not identities, but I would say they're just how love should be, and we should be, having elements of all of these things. Let me just read a list to you, and it's in alphabetical order. So things like accountability, active listening, acts of empathy, affirming communication. This is just intentional time, personal growth, teamwork, upskilling, undivided attention. So those are just a few of them, and within each love language here, there is an explanation of what it is. And then there are some, let's say, how would I say it? Some drawings or diagrams of what it could look like and what it isn't. So it's a really visual way of seeing, what this thing can be and what it isn't. So it's really interesting. So, and I think for myself, I've actually been able to identify a couple of things that I haven't been doing quite right. So it's kind of interesting. Well, what is right and wrong, but some things that I could definitely work on. As mentioned here, I'm definitely a student of love, and I'm really interested in the concept of relationships as the most powerful personal development modality that you can experience in life, and the most rewarding one as well, because that's what life is all about. It's about how we relate to others, and that's the most important part. It's not our work. It's how we experience connection, relationships, and love, etc. So this has been a real eye-opener to me, and actually interviewed Anne Hodder-Shipp this week, and I could have gone on for hours with her, but had to cut it short, unfortunately. But if you're interested in some love and communication frameworks, this is a really good book, I would say. And I would say if you're in a relationship or even single, to try and prepare for the next one, I would definitely recommend it. So that is Speaking from the Heart, 18 Languages for Modern Love. and that is the book I'm reading now. Now it's time to slow things down as we prepare for this episode's guided affirmations meditation. It's probably not a good idea to listen to this while driving or operating machinery. Instead, take a break from whatever you're doing, get comfortable, take a deep breath, and enjoy. I am relaxed. I am letting go. I did my best today. I did enough today. Sleep comes naturally to me. I'm falling asleep now. I am relaxed. I am letting go. I am ready to sleep. My body is relaxed. My mind is calm. I am falling asleep now. I am relaxed. I am letting go. I am ready to rest. I deserve to rest. I breathe in relaxation and I breathe out tension. I am falling asleep now. I am relaxed. I am letting go. I release all my worries. I know that tomorrow will take care of itself. I am ready to dream. I am falling asleep now. I am relaxed. I am letting go. I give myself permission to rest. I choose inner peace. I am calm. I am falling asleep now. I am relaxed. I am letting go. I am grateful for my comfortable bed. I am grateful for my pillows. I breathe in tranquility and I breathe out worry. I am falling asleep now. I am relaxed. I am letting go. I choose deep sleep. I embrace my ability to dream. I fall asleep effortlessly. I am falling asleep now. What if your next unforgettable orgasm was just one click away? Meet Tracy's Dog, the brand behind some of the most loved pleasure products on the market. Whether you're craving intense suction, blended bliss, or a toy that does it all, they've got you covered. And to make it even sweeter and unforgettable, you can get 15% off site-wide with my code VENUS. Head to tracysdog.com and discover your new favorite toy and use the code VENUS at checkout. Enjoy! To find out more about me and my orgasmic lifestyle, visit venusohara.org or follow me on Instagram at instagram.com/venusohara. Make sure to search for the Orgasmic Lifestyle Podcast by Venus O'Hara in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Make sure to click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Thanks for listening, have an orgasmic week, and make sure every day is a climax.